listeners, and welcome to our podcast. I am Ceren, your podcast host, and today we will be diving into the fast-emerging topic of digital activism with a focus on the 2013 Gezi Park protests in Turkey and the aftermath, where we closely examine the long-term both social and political implications of the movement. We will have Mr. Ceren, a protester who attended Gezi movement as a teenager. He will talk about his experiences with the authoritarian regime in Turkey, along with his observations of the Gezi movement. But before that, I want to start by reading some names to you. Ethem Sarısülük, Ahmet Atakan, Berkin Elvan, Medeni Yıldırım, Mehmet Ayvaltaş, and Ali İsmail Korkmaz. The names I just read out are all teen protesters who lost their lives, ages ranging from 15 to 26. And there are only some among the 11 other protesters who passed away as a result of the police violence, and 80,000 who were left heavily injured. It all started nearly 11 years prior to the protest, when the then and now Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced his plans to redevelop Istanbul's historical Taksim Gezi Park barracks into a shopping mall project. And this announcement later resulted in the widespread dissatisfaction, which led to a conversation battle that peaked in late May 2013. On May 27, 2013, a group of activists from the civil group called Taksim Solidarity gathered in the park after bulldozers came to the area to cut down the trees in the park. However, what began as a harmless demonstration against the government plan to uproot trees actually later spiraled into protests against the Prime Minister after a brutal police crackdown on peaceful protesters on May 31st. And Erdogan, in fact, later praised the crackdown, saying the police suppression of the protest was in fact heroic. And this sparked severe backlash, causing the movement to reach over 3.5 million participants all over the country within a span of just a couple of days, and lasting over 2 months in total. And Erdogan's reaction should have come by surprise, as this protest was one of the first and biggest attempts to threaten Erdogan's Islamic conservative authoritarian regime, followed by the alleged 2016 coup attempt. However, many scholars suggest that the Gezi Park protest stands apart, as it marks the first occasion when a broad coalition of including, but not limited to, nationalists, environmentalists, feminists, trade unionists, secular Kemalists, Alevis, the LGBTQ community, anti-capitalist Muslims, and even the fan club of main soccer clubs grouped together to better articulate their demands. Scholars actually argue that the Gezi Park protests in fact compelled Erdogan and his party to focus their efforts on becoming not hegemonic, but dominant by adopting a full-blown authoritarian populism. The author of the book called The Fugitive of Gezi Park, Goran, said, "It is true that Erdogan took a more authoritarian stance after Gezi Park, but he was already displaying increasingly authoritarian tendencies even before the protest took place. Actually, this was one of the underlying reasons behind the protest." And as a result, the movement's aftermath drastically changed Turkey by reshaping the country's political landscape, eroding democratic institutions, and limiting freedom of speech, and overall weakening democracy, which granted Erdogan even more control. In fact, the country's democracy index fell from 5.4 to 4.4 since the Gezi movement. Today, we will explore this perspective even further, looking at insider information and various resources to unpack these claims. But first, let's take a step back and define the concept. So, what role does digitization play in activism and social movements? Well, traditionally, activism has been associated with unity, commitment, resources, collective effort, and large numbers of participants with a high average age for participants. And the wave of digitization provided efficiencies that allow fewer participants to have greater impact and allowed younger people to participate. It also made mobilization easier for many, allowing greater visibility and awareness among more social groups and classes, lowering barriers to participation and creating new forms of resistance to organizing. However, while these forms of activism have been praised for their wide reach, immediacy, directness, and interactive potential, they have also been criticized for low efficiency and potential other harmful consequences, such as repressive digital tactics used by governments and creation of political apathy. So the Arab Spring is in fact what inspired countless scholars to discuss advanced knowledge on digital activism. However, its conceptual scope remains widely debated, and to this day, many scholarly contributions do not give a comprehensive or sometimes any definition of the term. One of the notable comprehensive conceptual discussions and descriptions is Ceren Zojani's definition of digital activism as political participation, activities, and protests organized within digital frameworks beyond representational politics and led by non-state actors. This take highlights the significance of digital tools in promoting the agency of non-state actors in driving political and social change. However, it is important to highlight that Ceren Zojani's definition is only the starting point, given that it is still an emerging topic for discussion, where new media outlets are constantly being developed and the limits of media are expanding even further. And this is where the term digital repression comes in, as it essentially argues that governments, private entities, and other actors use digital tools to control, suppress, or even manipulate activism. Scholars argue that digital repression can be carried out by state and private actors using overt or covert methods, where coercion, which is implemented through threats and force, and channeling, which seeks to shape behavior through policies, disinformation, and propaganda. And today we will be focusing on states' use of channeling. I now welcome our guest speaker and invite him to share his experiences on the matter. We often observe how protest slogans and demands evolve over time and sometimes shift from mildly political messages to more pushy and demanding calls, such as asking the government to resign. Do you think the slogans during the protests ever reached that level? And do you recall any memorable messages from these slogans?